Hello, everybody. This is Gerald Salenti, and it's Wednesday, May 14th. And once again, we are very honored and privileged to have with us a man of men who only speaks the things about they don't talk about, facts, and how they're facking us by getting rid of all these facts that used to be what was called American freedom, whether it's robbing us of our life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and locking you up for anything they want, and you can't stop you from doing it, even if it's right or wrong, good or bad. Judge, thanks for being here. You have an article coming out tomorrow. What if freedom is suspended? In all due respect, what do you mean, what if? The already if has happened.
Well, the what if refers to a threat by the president's chief advisor, Matthew Miller, that we, by which he must mean the president and himself, are considering suspending habeas corpus. Habeas corpus is a Latin phrase for the right of every human being to be brought before a judge, and a human being confined by the government, and have the charges explained and justified and the evidence laid out. Without habeas corpus, there would be arrests without trial, as there were during the Civil War when Lincoln suspended habeas corpus. Habeas corpus is guaranteed in the Constitution. The courts have ruled that only Congress can suspend it, and Congress can only suspend it in cases of rebellion or invasion, whereupon George W. Bush, your favorite modern president, I speak sarcastically with tongue firmly in cheek, attempted to suspend habeas corpus after 9/11, and the court said only Congress can do it, whereupon our favorite senator, again, tongue firmly in cheek, Lindsey Graham, offered and ushered through legislation of a congressional suspension of habeas corpus, whereupon the court said, well, we're not in an invasion or rebellion. In fact, the federal courts in Lower Manhattan, a couple of blocks from the World Trade Towers, were open the day after 9/11. So the courts interpret this literally because it's a natural, fundamental human right. Only Congress can do it, and only when there's an invasion or rebellion. Congress did it in the South during the Civil War. Unfortunately, they also did it in the North, where there was no rebellion or invasion, and that was invalidated by the courts. But think what the government would do and could do if they could arrest without trial. This would become like Franz Kafka's mythical place in the trial. This will be worse than the horrors of the Soviet Union in the 30s and the 50s. We wouldn't have any semblance of a democracy. We'd be a monarchy where the president was the monarch.
And this guy Miller is saying that that's what should happen.
He said, and to the press's credit, they pressed him on it. This is what we, again, he must mean the president and himself. Trump, there's a clip of Trump on Air Force One. It's about 2 weeks old, praising Miller to the skies as his chief advisor on everything. Miller is probably going to replace Mike Waltz as the national security advisor, which is the all-around go-to person. The National Security Advisor's office is right outside the Oval Office. But for Miller to say something like this, Miller, who was a lawyer, knowing what the law and the history is, as I've just attempted to describe it, and I'll give you another instance, and to say we must mean that he has put this idea in Trump's head. The one suspension of habeas corpus that was upheld by the courts was the reprehensible, despicable arrest by FDR of Japanese Americans and Italian Americans during World War II, saying he feared an invasion or rebellion, and the Supreme Court, by a vote of 5-4, upheld it. That Supreme Court decision is actually two. The lead one is called Korematsu. The Korematsu decision has since been condemned by subsequent Supreme Courts, condemned by subsequent presidents, Ronald Reagan, and condemned by Congress, which offered compensation to everybody still living 40 years later in 1980, who had endured living in these concentration camps in the middle of the Utah desert.
Yeah, it's so sad, when I mean, the level of inhumanity is it just goes on and on. Like I said, what's your favorite war? You like the Peloponnesian War? No, maybe you like the 100-Year War. Now the War of Roses was so lovely.
I had a conversation yesterday on air with Colonel McGregor, and I said, throughout the post-World War II era, what has the United States done more? Peaceful, charitable work or violent military work? He said, Judge, it's not even a close call. Violent military work. That's what the government tries to hide, but that's what the government stands for. No declaration of war since December 8th, 1941. Dozens of wars started by presidents, fought by the military, or fought by the CIA, like Obama's war against Libya, since 1941.
Now it just keeps going on. And
well, did we declare war against Yemen? No. We spent $1 billion, lost 3 fighter jets. They fell off the aircraft carrier into the ocean. That's almost inconceivable. So Trump said to Hegseth, it's over with. I'm tired of this. And then Trump said they capitulated. Nobody capitulated. We capitulated. But we shouldn't have been there in the first place.
Don't forget, Trump said he was going to annihilate them, remember?
Correct. Trump also said he'd end the Ukraine war in 24 hours.
Yeah.
Trump also said he'll bring peace to Gaza. Of course, his idea of peace to Gaza is Trump Tower Gaza, I guess.
Well, talking about Trump Tower Gaza, Trump now is in the Middle East and big deals are being made over there. One of them is that the Saudis are going to invest $600 billion in America, over 4 years? That's chump change, but okay, they're doing something. But how much of that dough is going into the military-industrial complex?
Probably all of it. How much are they investing in Trump Tower Riyadh or whatever his boys are building over there?
Yeah, they're building it all again, one after another. Qatar, United Arab Emirates, investments all over. So here's my take. With Trump over there, and he's not going to meet with Netanyahu. I believed at first that Trump was just doing the Iranian deal as a smokescreen, and they were going to continue to do what they can to destroy Iran. But now that he's in Saudi Arabia and making all these deals, I think they're going to back off on support for Israel at some point. Because
we are beginning to see that already, Gerald. The United States negotiated directly with Hamas. Netanyahu furious. Mike Huckabee, that uber Zionist American ambassador to Israel, who 2 weeks ago said he wouldn't even talk to anybody representing the Palestinians, was forced to go on air and say, we're going to bring aid in, and we don't care if the Israelis agree or not. Steve Witkoff is negotiating with the Iranians to allow a certain level of enrichment. The American B-52s have been sent back home to San Diego, and the president's in the Middle East and won't go to Israel. I think that's pretty telling. And the White House leaked that Trump can't stand Netanyahu because he feels he's being used or manipulated by him.
Well, again, it's about money. And you have his sons doing all this development over there. His son-in-law got $2 billion deal with Saudi Arabia, setting up his gig, Jared Kushner. And from what I read so far, they're going to be buying some Boeing planes, and so far about $147 billion for the military-industrial complex. So it's all about the bottom line. He only got a couple of $100 million from Sheldon Adelson's family.
Right.
So they're getting
So
billions.
on the military industrial complex, and I'm going to ask this question of Phil Giraldi, this afternoon, but I've asked it of all my people this week. Why the hell do we need a Defense Department budget of $1 trillion?
Yeah.
And they've all said the same thing. We could cut it in half and it would be too much. $1 trillion.
And
so
that
Trump, who says he's a man of peace, is a man of wasting money and borrowing like there's no tomorrow because of his exuberant love for all things military, which he personally disdained, but which he now, as commander-in-chief, loves.
Well, again, look what's going on in Europe. Look how matter of fact, there was an article in the Financial Times 2 days ago about Germany, about how Germany played the role of being so economically stable, and now they're borrowing $1 trillion to build up their defense, and also, of course, to put some money into rebuilding the infrastructure. And Germany's been in recession for 2 years, and they're entering into the third year of recession. They're borrowing $1 trillion to build up their military to fight those Russians, along with the Nordic states and one after another. They're all building up their military as their economies are going down. So you can see where this is all leading.
So Jeff Sachs says that Friedrich Merz, the new chancellor of Germany, with respect to peace and prosperity, is the most dangerous German chancellor since Hitler. That's quite a statement.
Well, I agree. You look at the statements coming out of his from him and the clowns that are in his office about the threat of Russia. I mean, these are the Germans that killed about 25 million of them in World War II, Operation Barbarossa. And it's and they have to watch out for the Russians. These are the ones that did the slaughter, and now they're saying we have to protect ourselves against them, with the same domino theory that you and I grew up with when the Vietnam War was going on.
Right. Oh, God, remember that? If we don't defeat the North Vietnamese, the communists will take over all of Asia. I mean, that was a theory propounded by LBJ and his people, and for a while by Nixon and his people, and it was farcical. And now it's propounded most loudly by Donald Tusk, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, as the president of Poland, but also by Prime Minister Starmer, President Macron, and Chancellor Merz. The domino theory. Joe Biden, with all of his mental problems, propounded the domino theory many times. Putin wants all of Ukraine. Trump agrees with that.
Yep.
After Putin takes Ukraine, Putin wants the rest of Western Europe. I don't think Trump agrees with that. But when Trump said Putin wants all of Ukraine, where Putin has expressly renounced it, couldn't afford it, and the last thing he would want is to govern a country where the governors will be shot by guerrilla warfare for generations. Nevertheless, they still think Putin wants all of Ukraine, or at least that's what they're saying. I think Trump is intentionally lying, knowing that Putin will eventually get Crimea and the 4 oblasts, and he'll say, see, I saved the rest of Ukraine.
I think you're 100% right. There's no way in the world that Russia is going to give back Crimea.
Right.
They had a vote. There were about 86% of the people went out to vote, and 97% of them said to leave Ukraine and go with the Russian Federation.
Right.
And that was a vote that was also monitored by that international organizations that said it was totally legitimate. And people have no idea of how Ukraine was killed, over 15,000 people in the Donbas region.
Correct.
Which is mostly Russian in Ukraine. And so they're not going to give back the 20% of the land that they've gotten. I don't see it happening.
Correct. And I don't see Zelensky agreeing to that. If Zelensky goes to Istanbul later this week and meets with Putin and Trump, it would be rather remarkable if that happens, but it could happen.
Yeah.
And Zelensky agrees to the no NATO, you can keep Crimea, you can keep the parts of the four oblasts that you already control. He better fly to his home in Paris or Miami, because if he goes back to Kyiv, they'll be having a funeral for him in a couple of days.
Yeah. So I see these wars keep ramping up from what they're doing, the money that they're spending.
Yes. So
and I think
Donald
Israel
Trump
is going.
Go ahead.
We're talking about Netanyahu. Netanyahu, knowing that he's going to be losing, he's going to do everything he can to win.
Yes. Netanyahu is, one of the most hated people on the planet, except by the government of the United States, which he controls. One of my intelligence people, I don't want to say who, said that on Air Force One, as it landed in Riyadh yesterday, 2 Mossad agents got out. 2 Mossad agents traveling with the president of the United States. Now, where is their loyalty? Who do they work for?
Oh, my God. A lot of this is a show. We don't really know. Trump, of course, says one thing, does another thing. But look at the tariff deal. 145% tariffs on China, down to 30%. Which, by the way, is still, pretty high. It's not that cheap. But he just keeps backtracking on everything that he says.
And the instability is what drives the market crazy. You know this better than I. This is your field. I honestly think, Gerald, I hate to say this, I don't think he understands economics 101. I don't think he understands the basic entry-level course that we all took as freshmen or sophomores in college about how the economy works.
Well, look at
he is putting so many small businesses out of business. Let's say you're a wine importer. Maybe you import $2 or $3 million worth of wine. You sell it for $3 or $4 million. Maybe you have 500,000 profit a year. A businessman. You're gone. Who's going to buy your wine that used to cost $100 and now is $175? The Americans won't buy it. You're cooked. Sell your inventory and close up shop.
And again, it's they're borrowing more money to increase the debt level as well. So it's just one terrible thing after another in terms of the economic reality. But look at the markets; they've bounced back from their lows.
Yes,
they're from their 25 lows. They're back up.
Right,
500.
How do you account for that? Is it irrational exuberance?
Or is it a gambler's game, playing the gambling game? I don't know. It's a wild card, and that's one of our top trends for 2025. Trump the card and the wild card,
right?
And they just keep playing it. There's one of them, and the wild card's the other one. I've never seen anything like this before. You don't know what's going to be played.
Well, Pete Rose will be in the Hall of Fame. Trying to say something to make the two of us smile because it's such gloom and doom. Although I know the audience and I love your audience and I'm privileged that you expose me to them. I know they appreciate what we say, no matter how downtrodden it is. They want to know what's going on and why it's happening, and which is the reason you do the Trends Journal and I do Judging Freedom.
Yeah, and about Judging Freedom, the people that the judge has on, you're not going to want to miss. Who do you have coming up, Judge?
I have the great Phil Giraldi today. So I also have Scott Horton of antiwar.com, and I have Professor Glenn Deason. I don't know if you've ever met or followed him. He's University of South Norway. His English is perfect. He monitors what these crazy elites like Starmer, Macron, van der Leyen, and Merz. he monitors what they're doing for us. He's 110% in our
Like
camp,
Robert, right?
even though he's Swedish, on minimal government, maximum individual liberty and peace. And he's excellent. I have him on once a week.
Yeah, I was on with him. Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, then you know him.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And again, the people that you have on are terrific. And I think we're in wild times. But again, going back to Trump, what he does, it's all going to be about the bottom line. It's about money. And his kids are all involved in it. Look at Bitcoin. We said it when he got elected in the Trends Journal. This stuff is going to keep going up because the crypto club gave him so much money for his inauguration and his campaign, and his kids are involved in it. The prices are going to go up. And you're looking at Bitcoin as we're speaking. What is it, $104,000?
Yeah, at some point it'll collapse. I mean, it's a bubble. Obviously, it's an unnatural, unusual, unjustified accumulation of wealth based on admiration for one person. Is that
Yes,
fair?
yes, but the thing is, they're going to make up anything they want. Like, for example, they're going to say, we're getting rid of that dirty cash and we're going to digital trash. This way they know every penny you spent, what you spent it on, where you spent it, and they get their tax money.
And they'll
go to
do
China,
that.
they're
And
going to
they'll
go
do
digital.
that by Treasury regulation. They won't do it by legislation because they'd never get Congress to vote for it.
They could get Congress to do anything they want. It's a clown show.
Well,
That's
the only
what
thing members of Congress fear is losing their cushy jobs.
That's it. Judge, thanks for being on today. Thank you for all that you do. Again, there's no one that knows about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and other issues like habeas corpus, of course, which is involved with that, than Judge Andrew Napolitano. And go to Judging Freedom. You got to see the people that he has on. They're terrific. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Gerald. God love you, my friend.